Do you want to learn how to install glue and bolts from people who've never done it before? Check it out on this episode of How Not to Highline. Hi, my name's David Keller, and welcome to my gear closet. Yesterday we bolted 2 highlines at the Buckskin Crags in Canon City, Colorado. We are planning on bolting 7 highlines here, and we are ultimately going to have a festival, hopefully at the beginning of this fall. So stay tuned for that. A big disclaimer for this video. Everyone involved in the bolting process this weekend was a beginner. We felt like we did the necessary research and had the right equipment to do it safely. We made several mistakes. We hope to share them with you so that you can learn from them. With that said, check out how we bolted 2 highlines this weekend. So we're planning on doing a 3-bolt anchor to go to the other side. Ideally, we would want to do an equilateral triangle, but as you can see, the rock here is really bumpy and has a lot of features, so you kind of have to work with the rock. We've hammered everything a bunch of times, and it's not exactly an equilateral triangle. This is about 18 inches by 5 feet and 5 feet. But we're okay with that because the middle bolt will always see the most load, so pushing it back an extra couple feet is probably a good thing for equalization. So one of the biggest things that you need to be concerned about before you bolt something is rock quality. Ryan has a great video discussing the various kinds of rock, and I suggest you read the chapter in the Bolting Bible discussing this. Colorado is famous for really bad rock quality. We knew from a local geologist that the spot we were bolting was red granite, which is pretty rare and good quality rock for Colorado. Nevertheless, we weren't sure if the spot where we wanted this highline to be was going to be really solid granite. So we decided to overkill everything, especially since this was our first time. We decided to use the 12mm by 150mm Monster Crux bolts. These are rated to 60 kilonewtons, the eye is, so we're never worried about the metal actually breaking. And we are using the Hilti, what is it technically called? The Hilti HIT RE500 V3 glue. This is basically the top of the line stuff that you can buy. It is definitely overkill for most applications. The reason we went with this is because we have a Hilti Pro deal, so it was relatively affordable for us to get this. If I was to do it myself and I didn't have a Pro deal, I would consider other glues like Liquid Rock 500 is a great alternative. The other pro to this is that it cures down to 23 degrees Fahrenheit. We were not sure when we were going to be bolting, so this was an extra benefit to say if we were going to bolt on a cold weekend that we could still get away with doing it. So we're about to drill our hole, but before we do, we need to know how deep to go. Today we're using the 12mm by 150mm Monster Crux bolts, and essentially what that means is that to the bottom of the eye it is exactly 150 millimeters. You can see right there. And online it says that you should drill an extra 5 millimeters deeper. So that's what we're gonna do. Cut. We're here with Ben Black. He has bolted several climbing routes in the area, and he's gonna give us some pointers on how to drill the perfect hole. But first, Ben, what are you holding in your hands?
I'm holding a Hilti 36 bolt rotary hammer drill, and it's got a Bosch 9/16 SDS drill bit in it.
Perfect. And do you have any tips on drilling the perfect hole?
Just keep your hole perpendicular with the rock and keep it as straight as you can when going in. You can use your knee if you need to keep it straight, hold it straight. Other than that, just let the drill do the work and don't push too hard.
This is an extra step that we're taking in the bolting process. Essentially, we have dry fitted the bolts, so they are not glued yet and they are not notched yet, but we have tied a sliding X to C where the rope is going to want to go when we shoot straight across. And the idea is that we're going to make the notches parallel to the strands of rope. And the reason we want to do that is so when you show up here and you're tying a BFK, sometimes it's hard to get it perfect, but if you can use the notches of the bolt to indicate where the legs should go, it'll be really easy to tie a BFK perfectly every time. When it came to actually drilling the notch for our bolts, we ran into several difficulties. It was much harder than we thought it would be, especially because the rock that we were bolting was not perfectly flat. It had many features and little bumps that would kind of push the drill bit around, making it really hard to drill a perfectly straight notch. So the strategy we followed was a little different from the one that Jerry used in his video, or in Ryan's last video. Basically, we drilled our first hole for the spine of the bolt, then we drilled a second hole straight down at the end of the eye, so you have the main hole and then a smaller hole right here that is only the depth of the bottom of the eye. You don't want to go too deep, otherwise you waste some glue. With these two holes drilled, we then found it easiest to drill one right in the middle. So now you have 3 holes, one really deep, 2 shallow. From here, we took our drill at a 45-degree angle and cleared out the rest of the rock in between here. And we did what you shouldn't do, which is to kind of abuse your drill bit and use it kind of as a chisel to scrape and make this flat, but that's what we did and it worked pretty well. We were using a Bosch drill bit, and my friend Ben said that he was very confident that we couldn't break it. So I don't recommend you do that, but it is what we did, and that is how we did most of our notches. I would like to take a minute to talk about the rationale behind putting in the bolts backwards. So essentially, bolts, especially P-shaped bolts, have always been used like this, where the rope is pulling at the end of the eye, and the challenge with this is that your notch has to be pretty in line with the direction of your rope. So if you look at it like this, you want it to be straight on. The challenge with this is that if you notched incorrectly or you did it in the wrong direction and in reality your bolt is slightly twisted, you are now creating a lever arm which can create a torque on the bolt and crack the glue. We decided to put in our bolts backwards so that the rope would be pulling on the spine of the bolt, and this way, no matter which direction you pull on the bolt, you're not going to create a torque. This is kind of good for our application because we're talking about potentially doing a space net out there where we're not sure what the direction of the highline will be, so that is why we put in our bolts backwards. Another topic worth emphasizing is how important it is to clean the hole. I ordered this dust pump and it was supposed to be here last Friday. However, Colorado had other plans and we had a massive ice storm which delayed my shipment. We scheduled everyone to be bolting on Sunday, and I didn't feel like it was worth pushing it off another weekend to do, so we cleaned our holes with a traditional blow tube method. There are several reasons why I believe a dust pump is well worth the money. The first being that this definitely has a lot more blow force, if that's a thing, than someone blowing through a tube, and especially if you push really quickly. You get a lot of air moving really fast. It's a great way to clean your hole. My second concern, and I think it's my biggest concern, is that we used the blow tube to clear out all 6 holes, and by the end, the blow tube was definitely building up moisture from the person who's blowing. Their breath clearly had moisture and it was building up in the tube, probably going into the hole. The dust that we were trying to get out of the hole probably interacted with that moisture and didn't want to come out as well. So the moisture from your breath probably makes cleaning the hole a lot harder. Don't have that problem with this. And my third reason is that if you make one poor soul blow out all your holes because he's sick, then he might feel really lightheaded by the end of the process, especially if you do 5 blow cycles per hole, which is what we did. If you're really lightheaded on a cliff edge, might be dangerous. Just something to think about. One nifty trick that we used when we were cleaning our holes is that as soon as we were done cleaning a hole, we covered it with a small piece of duct tape. I think this saved a lot of time because as soon as we finished a hole, we covered it, went on to blow out the next one, and we would blow dust all over the place, but we knew that the hole we just cleaned wasn't getting dirty. One of my biggest concerns for this bolting project was knowing how much glue to use. Ryan told me that this 11 fluid ounce canister or capsule was sufficient enough to fill 6 holes. That proved to be absolutely correct. We were able to do 6 test squirts or trigger pulls into a plastic bag before we started filling our 6 holes, and we were able to do 6 test squirts after we finished gluing all of our holes. So this 11-ounce canister was perfect for 6 holes plus 12 test squirts, and we completely used it all.
We used all of this glue.
One of our goals was to try and keep our bolting area really clean of excess glue. We did that by using duct tape yet again. We created a small rectangle around our bolt hole, and as we filled it with glue, we were kind of aware that excess glue would spill all over the place. It is a messy process. The duct tape allowed us to peel the glue off later when we were done, leaving some really nice, clean, rectangular glue blobs right over our bolts. The mistake we made is that we let our glue cure too long. We ran off and got lunch, came back, realized that the glue was super hard, and it was kind of a pain to get the duct tape off out of the partially cured glue. So make sure if you do the rectangular duct tape method that you peel off the glue basically as soon as you're done gluing, and that'll make the area look really clean. Another mistake we made was that when we inserted our bolt, we did not cover the bottom of the eye with glue. This was shown in Ryan's previous video. I totally forgot to do it. Instead, I made sure to keep this area nice and shiny. I'm not sure if it is a mistake though, because it preserves a lot of the space in the eye. It is not being occupied with this glue. And Ryan also told me that if that glue that is covering the bottom of the eye is not perfectly smooth, when it hardens, it can get really sharp if there are any ridges on it. So we didn't cover the bottom of the bolt with glue. Let me know if you think that is a problem. I personally think that the 6 inches in the rock, that glue is what is actually holding you. This is to just kind of prevent the torque, and the eye is still in a notch. It's just that we made this perfectly flush with the rock. Let me know if you think that's a problem. Trying to be environmentally conscious, we decided to sprinkle our red glue with local pebbles and dust. The mistake there was the word pebbles. The local rocks there, even though they're very small, are really sharp, and we are concerned that once the glue is hardened and those things aren't moving, they might be a source of abrasion. If you have really fine dust in your area, or you manage to save some of the dust created from drilling, I think that is exactly what you should use. So just be aware, don't use pebbles that are really sharp or too big, because they might cause problems later. There are some extra pieces of equipment that I think made the bolting process much easier. The first was rubber gloves. Having rubber gloves kind of got rid of the fear of touching the glue and making it look pretty. I did touch the glue without rubber gloves, and it kind of sucks. Your hands get super sticky, obviously. Another piece of equipment is Q-tips. With the Q-tips, you're really able to polish up your glue and make it look nice, push it to where you want it. We used a lot of Q-tips, definitely bring more than you think you should. I think we used a total of 10 or 12, which is kind of ridiculous, but it gets really messy, especially if you have a lot of excess glue. And if you're trying to be a perfectionist, bring a tape measure. We were able to know exactly the dimensions of the triangle we bolted, and it kind of made me feel warm and fuzzy that we're at least trying to follow good highlining standards by keeping a nice consistent shape. My final comment on the bolting process as a whole is to not totally be afraid of doing it. It is not rocket science, but please respect the process. There is a lot to know. I personally felt like I had to read the bolting Bible about 5 times before I felt really confident in what I was doing. I watched as many YouTube videos as I could on the subject. Many of them were not in the language I speak, but I learned what to do, what not to do. The more knowledge, the better for me. And I asked Ryan as a bunch of questions. I don't necessarily recommend that you do that, because he might just make you make a YouTube video for him. but I also would recommend trying to go with people who know what they're doing, obviously. That wasn't really an option for me. I did go with my friend Ben, who had bolted several rock climbing routes in the area, but most of his experience was with mechanical bolts, so glue and bolting was new for both of us. I hope this video is helpful for you guys. There's a lot to know, a lot of mistakes to be made. Just know what you're doing, I guess. Good luck. Installing glue and bolts requires a lot of time, money, and effort. Therefore, you should let your friends do it.